The chronological order of the Five Nights at Freddy's games has been one of the most debated aspects of the series, largely because the story was not presented linearly. Instead, the narrative unfolds through hidden minigames, newspaper clippings, phone calls, retro-style cutscenes, and environmental storytelling. When piecing everything together based on in-game evidence rather than release order, a fairly coherent timeline emerges, though some details remain intentionally ambiguous. The earliest major events in the timeline occur before any playable night shift. At the center of everything is the partnership between William Afton and Henry Emily, co-founders of the original animatronic restaurants. Before the Freddy Fazbear brand became dominant, there was Fredbear's Family Diner, a smaller establishment featuring two Springlock suits, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. These suits could function as both animatronics and wearable costumes, though the Springlock mechanism was notoriously dangerous. During this era, William Afton began committing child murders, luring victims while dressed in the Spring Bonnie suit. One of the earliest tragedies involves Henry's daughter, Charlotte Emily, who is murdered outside the diner. Her death leads to her spirit possessing the puppet, an animatronic designed to protect children. This possession becomes critical because the puppet later gives life to other murdered children by allowing their spirits to inhabit the animatronics. Five Nights at Freddy's 4 takes place during this early period, centering on the so-called crying child, widely believed to be William Afton's younger son. The gameplay represents his nightmares, filled with distorted animatronics. The famous bite of 83 occurs at Fredbear's Family Diner when the child is accidentally lifted into Fredbear's mouth by his older brother and friends. A malfunction causes the springlocks to snap shut, crushing the child's head. This incident leads to the closure of Fredbear's Family Diner and heightens concerns about the safety of Springlock suits. The game's minigames strongly imply that William's experiments with fear, illusion technology, and animatronics capable of capturing children were already underway. After the closure of Fredbear's, the larger Freddy Fazbear's Pizza chain expands. This period leads into the events depicted in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, which is set in 1987. Contrary to its release order, this is one of the earliest main location games in the timeline. The toy animatronics are introduced here, equipped with facial recognition systems linked to criminal databases, likely in response to the earlier murders. However, William infiltrates this location as a security guard under a false identity and continues killing children. The puppet once again gives life to the victims, resulting in animatronics becoming haunted. The infamous bite of 87 also occurs around this time, likely involving one of the toy animatronics attacking a daytime employee. By the end of the game, the toy models are scrapped, and the older animatronics are retained for possible reuse. Five Nights at Freddy's, the first released game, takes place after the 1987 location closes, probably in the early 1990s. The animatronics here are the classic Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, rebuilt from older models. The phone guys calls reference previous closures and the bite of 87, placing it later chronologically. By this time, the restaurant is clearly struggling financially. The spirits of the murdered children remain active within the suits, attacking night guards because they mistake them for William Afton. Eventually, the location shuts down due to sanitation issues and declining business. After this closure, William returns to dismantle the animatronics, possibly to harvest remnant, a substance associated with soul-binding metal. However, the spirits corner him in the safe room. In desperation, he hides inside the old Spring Bonnie suit, but the moisture triggers a Springlock failure, impaling him. He becomes trapped inside the suit, transforming into Springtrap. This directly sets up the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 3, which occurs approximately 30 years later. A horror attraction based on the old restaurants uncovers the sealed safe room and unknowingly installs Springtrap as an attraction. The player works as a guard, while the building experiences phantom hallucinations and ultimately burns down. Although the fire is intended to end everything, Springtrap survives. Running parallel to some of these events is the storyline of Five Nights at Freddy's, sister location. This game likely occurs after the original Freddy's closures, but before the horror attraction of the third game. It centers on Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, a facility created by William Afton. The advanced Funtime animatronics were designed specifically to capture and kill children. Circus Baby, possessed by William's daughter Elizabeth after she is killed by the animatronic, becomes a central figure. The protagonist, Michael Afton, William's surviving son, works at the facility and ultimately has his body taken over by Ennard, a fusion of the animatronics. Michael survives through Remnant but becomes a decaying figure, dedicating himself to undoing his father's crimes. The final chronological chapter is presented in Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, often referred to as Five Nights at Freddy's 6. Henry Emily returns and orchestrates a plan to gather all remaining haunted animatronics into one location. Michael acts as manager, salvaging animatronics including Scrap Baby, Molten Freddy, and Springtrap, now called Scraptrap. In a climactic ending, Henry sets the building on fire, intending to release the trapped souls and end the cycle permanently. His speech suggests that this is the intended conclusion of the original storyline, with Michael, Henry, Elizabeth, William, and the remaining spirits all perishing in the blaze. Following these events, Help Wanted and Security Breach occur much later, in a meta-era where the tragedies have become urban legends and corporate cover-ups. Help Wanted introduces the idea that the company created a virtual reality game to discredit the rumors, inadvertently allowing a digital form of William Afton, Glitchtrap, to spread. Security Breach then takes place in a massive futuristic mall built over the ruins of previous locations, implying that despite attempts to end the horror, remnants of Afton's influence persist. When arranged chronologically, the story begins with Fredbear's Family Diner and the Bite of 83, continues through the 1987 Freddy's location, moves to the early 1990s Pizzeria, branches into sister locations Underground Experiments, jumps 30 years to the horror attraction of the third game, and concludes with Henry's final fire in Pizzeria Simulator. The later titles extend beyond this core arc into a new phase of corporate corruption and digital resurrection. Though some details remain debated, this order best aligns with in-game clues, dates, and character arcs, forming a tragic generational saga centered on guilt, revenge, and the consequences of unchecked ambition.